Were you an atheist as a teenager?
No, I was an agnostic. I always thought atheism was a stupid position because you can't prove the non-existence of God any more than you can prove the existence of God on a purely rational level. Of course, I came to realize later that that you can prove the existence of God beyond reasonable doubt.
I also think you can prove the non-existence of God if God didn't exist. There are ways, right? Let me show you. All you would have to do is to show that there is a contradiction in the concept of God. If you could do that, I'm not saying it exists.
Okay.
I'm just saying that what's been interesting over the last 20 years is I think a lot of atheists are redefining atheism to mean agnosticism. And now it's kind of indistinguishable. But there was a time that people had arguments against the existence of God. That didn't mean they were certain God didn't exist, but they at least had reasons for it. Yeah. And they might be things like the problem of evil. Like here's an argument against God's existence, right? If God is all good and all powerful and all knowing, then since he's all good, he wouldn't want there to be evil in the world. Since he's all powerful, he could do away with the evil. Since he's all knowing, he would be aware of all the evil. So it's not like he can say, well, I would have done something, but I didn't know about that. But evil exists. Therefore, God is either impotent, ignorant, or wicked, So that's an argument. It just doesn't work. I get that it doesn't work. Right. My point is, I think you can, if God didn't exist, I think, that's the atheists used to try to give arguments. They'd say, can God create a heavy rock so heavy he can't lift it? So those sorts of arguments, I think, could show God doesn't exist. I just don't think they do.
Right. I think that those arguments are ultimately superficial. They are... it's sophistry rather than rhetoric. Rhetoric to me is the use of words and the use of reason in pursuit of truth. Sophistry is the use of words, use of reason in order to pursue an agenda. And I think the vast majority... I wrote something once about good and noble, on noble and ignoble atheism. And I said, there is such thing as a noble atheist. Chesterton wrote a book called The Bull and the Cross, a novel. And the two main characters in that novel are McKeon, who's a Catholic, and Turnbull, who's an atheist. And they both take truth so seriously, they want to fight a duel over it, right? But the rest of the world, because they're relativists of various descriptions, right? Nietzscheans and other types of philosophies that are playing in the background, they don't think truth is important or that it exists. And in the end, Turnbull and McKeon sort of come to realize they have more in common with each other because they're authentically pursuing the truth than they have with all the relativists out there. I think the problem is, and I don't know whether it was less true in the past, you might have a valid point there, but I think that there are far fewer noble atheists than we actually realize. Most of them are motivated by a desire that God doesn't exist and trying to find arguments for his non-existence, which is not the same as trying to pursue the truth.
But I think you could say the same about Christians, that most are ignoble, that they just like the idea of there to be some comforting sugar daddy up in the clouds who's going to make them feel good about themselves, and they want to see their dead relatives when they die.
I couldn't agree with you more. I couldn't agree with you more. I'll give you an example, by the way. Actually, I had a conversation with someone who shall remain nameless, who says that I know that God doesn't exist, and he was angry. He was clear, he didn't want God to exist, and then I mentioned about some deceased, his deceased grandparents, and I said, he said, well, I know they're in heaven. I said, no, you don't. He said, if God doesn't exist, they're rotting in the ground. You can't have it both ways. So he wanted the comfort of religion, but he also didn't like the idea of God. But then he realized, well, I've got to have one or the other. I can't have both, right? But you're correct. Some people, they like the idea of God because it makes things easy. We're all going to die and be happy. We're all going to live happily ever after.
That was my thing when I was like 15, 16. I liked the idea of God. I didn't like the idea of being told what to do.
Right.
So I'll have a God if I can have my fornication and my pornography and my drinking and my everything else. I wanted that. That's why Eastern religions like Buddhism, where there was a lot of flex in the joints as it pertained to morality, were very attractive, right? I could have this sort of transcendent, more spiritual view of the world while basically being a schmuck, morally speaking. So you were agnostic. Did you care about God's existence as a young man?
No, that basically he was not important to me. He was irrelevant. For me, the problems of the world were political. and they had political solutions, and you had to fight the political battle and win the political victory, and that was what make the better world is politics. And of course, I realise now that's nonsense, but that was where I was at. I couldn't get beyond ideology to get to higher places such as philosophy and theology.
I want to tell you about a course that I have created for men to overcome pornography. It is called strive21.com/Matt. You go there right now, or if you text STRIVE to 66866, we'll send you the link. It's 100% free, and it's a course I've created to help men, to give them the tools to overcome pornography. Usually men know that porn is wrong. They don't need me or you to convince them that it's wrong. What they need is a battle plan to get out. And so I've distilled all that I've learned over the last 15 or so years as I've been talking and writing on this topic into this one course. Think of it as if you and I could have a coffee over the next 21 days and I would kind of guide you along this journey. That's basically what this is. It's incredibly well produced. We had a whole camera crew come and film this. And I think it'll be a real help to you. And it's also not an isolated course that you go through on your own, because literally tens of thousands of men have now gone through this course. And as you go through the different videos, there's comments from men all around the world encouraging each other, offering to be each other's accountability partners and things like that. Strive21, that's strive21.com/Matt, or as I say, text STRIVE to 66866 to get started today. You won't regret it.